celebrate with us a remarkable book that has just been published and to celebrate Mount Diablo. Tonight's theme is art in nature. And as I've said to so many people before who have complimented this book and Stephen Joseph's photographs, who I will introduce in just a moment, and I'll introduce myself as well, we have no greater example of natural beauty and diversity, a true work of art, than Mount Diablo, our own Mount Diablo. We produced a book, we published a book featuring the magnificent portraits and panoramas of our esteemed landscape photographer, Stephen Joseph. The narrative was written by me, Linda Rymack-Kohlberg, and the book was published by the all-volunteer nonprofit Mount Diablo Interpretive Association. We will go on a tour of Mount Diablo through the images and beautiful photographs of Stephen Joseph during the program, and after the program, the book is for sale. Every book that you buy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, purchase back there. Stephen and I will be over there to sign your copies of the book. Now, before we proceed, we want to get in the mood. So Stephen has put together a little slideshow to just give you a taste of Mount Diablo. that's a sampling of what you'll find in Mount Diablo, the extraordinary life and landscapes of a California treasure. And you can see why this is such a remarkable book. And I can say that because I didn't create those photographs. Stephen did. And he knows I am his #1 biggest fan. We're here tonight to talk about Mount Diablo and the art that is on Mount Diablo and the art that Stephen has found and how he creates his photographs. He will take you on a journey on the mountain. I wanted to share just a couple of comments with you because I know you're really here to see the photographs. But I wanted to tell you how thrilled we are to be here. We really are. This is a wonderful library. This is our community living room, is how we consider it. And all of us have gathered here because we have something in common, and that's our Mount Diablo. It really is the heart of our community. We are hikers or bikers, or we ride horses up there, or sometimes we go up there just for a little solace. All of us have a connection. Some of us have raised our children here, and they learn to appreciate nature. They learn to camp. There is something about Mount Diablo that continues to draw us. We're artists, we're photographers, we're naturalists. Stephen is all of that, and that's why the photographs, I believe, are presented to you from the eyes of an artist and the eyes of a naturalist. And I think that I am pretty true in saying that you've never seen Mount Diablo quite like this. You've taken your photographs, and they don't quite capture it like this. He does a great panorama. And what he does with clouds, I still don't know how you do it. Great clouds. I know I'll never look at clouds the same way. I wanted to certainly thank the library for inviting us to be here tonight to share with you the book and these images. When Stephen and I got together 2 years ago to start building this book, there were 2 events that I really wanted to hold. One was the book release event in Walnut Creek, and we did that on March 12th at the Walnut Creek Barnes & Noble. And the second event I wanted to do was to hold a book event here in the Walnut Creek Library. Now remember, 2 years ago, it still wasn't built. In fact, July 18th is its 1st year anniversary. And that the book could be released when the library was already built was so great. Everything has come together. So as I say, we're so happy to be here. We're so happy to share this with you. Thank you so much for being here. When Stephen goes through the images up on the screen, please feel free to ask questions. This is a good question and answer time for the audience as well, because you may wonder how he got that shot and where he was and how he was able to get behind the waterfall to shoot out instead of into. I'm real happy all of you are here, including my dad. So a quick shout out to my dad, Joe Rymack. He's the Rymack of Linda Rymack Kohlberg. Came down from Crescent City, and I appreciate that, Dad. Thanks so much. Art in nature. So much to be said about art in nature. Andy Warhol has a great comment about art. The book is sprinkled with quotations from naturalists most of all. But Andy Warhol had a great quote, and I had to include it. He says, "I think having land and not ruining it is the most beautiful art that anybody could ever want to own." And I think we feel that way about Mount Diablo. And we know that it is land worth saving and protecting and preserving today and for generations to come. And if we embrace that idea, we will do that. We will have the mountain for ourselves, and we'll have the mountain for our kids and their kids and their kids. So now strap on your virtual hiking boots and grab your hiking pole, and we're going to go on a journey around Mount Diablo with Stephen Joseph. Thank you.
Why is it called Diablo?
Long story behind that, and I'm happy to talk about that after we go through some photographs.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. This book really started 27 years ago when I first started photographing Mount Diablo. And a friend of mine, Greg Pyatt, I don't know if you know Greg, he's a wonderful watercolorist, oil painter. He's been painting Diablo for as long as I've been photographing it. Said to me one day, "Hey, let's go for a hike." And I just we said, yeah, let's go. And we went up to Diablo, and I haven't stopped going. Can't believe it's been 27 years. But this book has been in the making for many years. I just wanted to give you a quick 5-minute how I got to panoramic photography, because most of the book is panoramic photography, whether it's verticals or horizontal. But I started about 25 years ago doing 3D photography. And if you've ever seen the old stereopticon cards, anybody know those, where the double image next to each other? They look like a panoramic photograph. Well, I was making those stereo cards for a bunch of years, and I kept looking at the shape going, this is a great shape. You know, it was two single images next to each other, but when you kind of looked at them all together, it was a panoramic format. So I started looking around for old cameras to do panoramic format and found these 100-year-old panoramic cameras. They were made by Kodak around the turn of the century. And so I found one at a flea market somewhere, and I rebuilt it and got it working, and just started doing panoramic photography then. So the book is made up of just the last 20 years. I didn't put my first 7 years of stereo photography in, which was primarily what I was doing. Mostly it's panoramic photography. Of course, the 100-year-old cameras have gone the way of the digital now, and now everything is digital and everything is stitched together. I used to they were old wooden box cameras, and now it's all electronics. And I mentioned earlier to somebody that about 12 years ago I was saying how I don't use any batteries. There's no batteries in any of my cameras because they were made before batteries were invented. And no electronics, no plugs, no chargers. And now you can't walk through my studio. All it is wires and plugs and USB cords, and it's all electronic now, and everything is stitched together. When I go through the photographs, which I'm going to do in a minute, some are taken with film with 100-year-old cameras, and some are taken with digital images that are stitched together, and you really can't tell which is which. And as I go through the photos, if you have any questions and you want to know something about where something was taken, just shout out and I'll answer your questions. When you look at the book, if you want a little hint on what's film, there's some double images where 2 images, one on top and one on bottom, going across 2 pages. Those are film. Those are the 100-year-old cameras. So look at those and then look at the others and see if you can tell the difference. It's kind of neat. Anyway, let's just look at a few photographs. Yeah, maybe we should have the lights. That's probably a good idea. This is last December 7th. Does everybody remember the snowstorm? The most incredible snowstorm that I've seen in 27 years, with the snow down to, you know, everybody's backyards. This was taken in at the end of Shell Ridge, where I photograph a lot. Yeah, could we get the lights? Who turned them off before? Here we go. Yeah, it's a little washed out. That's a digital shot. That's 15 digital photographs stitched together into one long panorama. Yeah, I say turn them off. Is that better? This is a photograph that I've been looking for, this location where I took this photograph since I took it in 1995. It's on Chaparral Springs property, which Save Mount Diablo owns now. And that's North Peak off in the distance, and the sun is setting over North Peak. This was one of those perfect moments. Did you ever, Spalding Gray talked about perfect moments, if you ever saw any of his movies, or this was a perfect moment. The light, the sun. And I went back in this general area 50 times, and I'd never had this repeated. And I can't even find the spot. I've been looking for that tree for quite a while. my favorite tree on Mount Diablo, dragon oak, which unfortunately has about half fallen over. The nice thing about photography, I do landscape photography, and I'm always photographing Mount Diablo, and I do Sonoma County. I do the whole Bay Area. But I keep going back to the same places over and over. And as I change formats, when it used to be I'd get a new 100-year-old camera, I'd have to go back to all the same spots that I used to go to, like Dragon Oak, and re-photograph them, because each camera would take a different looking photograph. And now that I'm into digital, I miss that because it's kind of the same camera. I don't get that excitement of getting a new camera. Here's yew tree. You can see why it's called yew tree. These are all my names, of course. If you start looking on a map for yew tree or dragon oak or any of these, you won't find them. But I've had to name all these trees and spaces because there's no names for them. This is another perfect moment. There's a lot of perfect moments on Diablo. Just great light. Does anybody know where this is from? Anyone want to take a guess? You see the double peaks off in the distance?
Morgan Territory?
Yes, very good. Morgan Territory. This is up on top of Moses Rock Ridge. Does anybody hike on Moses Rock Ridge? It's a really beautiful spot. And you're actually looking all the way across at Mount Tamalpais. That little sliver on the horizon is Mount Tamalpais. And that's just when, the great thing about Diablo, those dreary, foggy days when everything's so cold and damp down in the Bay Area, all you got to do is get above 2,500, 3,000 feet and you come out in the sun. And this is one of those days where the fog was just clearing, and this is just a little bit left in the valley of the fog. Another snow day from Curry Point. This was a light dusting of snow, unlike that December 7th. It was quite a bit more. That's film. Can anybody tell? Probably not. That's one of the 100-year-old cameras. A Kodak number 3A, built in 1901, I think. Of course, I had to rebuild the camera to take film because it wasn't, there's no film made to fit this camera. And it also, there's a bunch of photos in the book with this camera. This camera has no viewfinder. It's just a box. So you had to point it in the right direction. And it was rather challenging to get the horizon level. And now with a computer and digital, you can straighten anything. You have a crooked horizon, you just tweak it a little bit and straighten it out. But this was a real challenge, using a camera with no viewfinder. And I'd stand there with the camera and you just have to kind of look and say, okay, it's going to cover this much and this high. That's Castle Rock. This is from one of my favorite spots, just at the very end of Shell Ridge in Walnut Creek. Great spot to go to, park at Borges Ranch, and you're up there in about 10 minutes. Another shot from Chaparral Springs, looking at the east side. That's North Peak. Here's Oak Flat. I've probably taken more photographs in Oak Flat than any other spot. And Oak Flat, there were two main trees in Oak Flat, and one of those trees has fallen down, so it's not quite the same. It's at about 1,000 feet on the mountain. A perfect spring day. That tree fell down. I used that tree in a lot of my photographs, and now it's not there anymore. So I have to change as the mountain changes. This is an unusual photograph. I bet no one can guess where this one's at. How about my Morgan Territory guesser? You got any idea? No. This is a spot that you can't get to. It's on the very top of the quarry. And there's a little 50-acre parcel of land that's owned by the, I think it's BLM land. And it's the only thing that's keeping the quarry people from taking down the whole mountain, is this little tiny section of land. And it's the only spot where you see all, on the left you see North Peak, and then the main peak, and then you see Eagle Peak, and Mount Zion is over here, and then there's Moses Rock Ridge. So you're looking right up Mitchell Canyon, and it's the only spot I've found that close where you really can see all 5 peaks. Of course, you're not supposed to go up there. Minor problem. But it's a great view of all the peaks. Another dragon oak. Any questions? You want to throw a question out, maybe? Everybody's happy? That's what it looks like to me. Now, it's it keeps falling down, so every year or two another branch falls down, so it's looking a little less like a dragon than it used to. Now, they're all made up names.
How old do they get to be?
These oaks? I mean, this has got to be at least a couple hundred years old, maybe older. I can put my arms around it 5 times, probably. So that's probably about 30 feet, maybe 4 times, 25 feet around. It's kind of a short, very wide tree, so it's probably pretty old. And for years, just to the left of that lowest branch, there was a beehive. Every year there was a beehive in there. And I'd go up. I wanted so much to try some dragon oak honey, because this is my favorite tree. I thought, oh, the honey in this tree's got to be fantastic. So I'd stand there for hours, you know, looking at the light and coyotes walking by and stuff, and trying to figure out how to get a little stick in the in the hole. I never did taste any dragon oak honey. And now, yeah, without getting stung. And now the branch that had the beehive in it has fallen down, so, and the bees never came back. But I thought that would be the best thing.
Does it ever bud?
Yeah, it's alive. No, it's alive. It's just, you know, it's declining. This was a great day. This is one of those days where the snow at the top of the mountain maybe came down 100 feet. That was it. This is very near the summit, looking off at North Peak with Clayton off in the left and Morgan Territory off in the right. And this was totally in the clouds. I left home. You couldn't see the top. It's just one of those days, you know, it's cold enough, and you know, you take a chance and go up to the top, and hiking around, couldn't see anything. It was completely, the cap was on the mountain, completely fogged in. And then all of a sudden, it went from having 0 visibility to this in about 5 or 10 minutes. It just, the clouds broke, shafts of light coming down. It was just gorgeous. And I had about an hour that it looked like this, and then it was gone. It's just all the great clouds blew out. And, you know, the best time to photograph on Mount Diablo is either as the storms come in or as they go out. You get the best light. When the storms come in, it's not quite as clear. This is a storm that was leaving. So I always watch the weather and then figure out when I can get to, you know, get up there, because the light is just beautiful. When you get the storms blown through, the air is cleared out, it's just gorgeous, and the storms clear out so fast. I mean, sometimes I'll be up there and I'll have, like I said, an hour with beautiful light, and then it's gone. And what most people think is beautiful, the sunny skies, I don't even go out when it's sunny. It's not my kind of weather. Beautiful to me is dark clouds with rain, and you know, it makes for the most interesting photographs. Beautiful shadows on the ground. That's really the one I like to photograph. But this is one of those days. I had a whole hour. Here's Pond Buckeye. beautiful little pond. This pond will never be the same. I went back a couple of years ago, and that whole branch that you see leaning to the left had fallen into the pond. So it's not quite the same. So amazing. You know, everybody thinks that landscape kind of takes a long time to change. You know, something like the Grand Canyon, maybe there's millions of years to form. But up on Mount Diablo, this is in what I call Skunk Hollow, which is right above Pine Pond. And these little ponds would form, and they might only be there for a year or two. And then I go looking for, you know, I might go looking for one of the ponds, and I can't find it because it's just not there. So they come and they go, and you might see them for a while, and then the trees fall down. And because I go back to the same spots over and over, I kind of think, okay, I'd like to be here in spring, or I might be here later in the year. And then you go back like that spot on Chaparral Springs that I've never been able to find again. And it keeps changing.
Do you use all natural light in pictures, or do you ever use still light or flash?
No, it's all natural light. Yeah, it's all available light. Even when I shoot my interiors, it's all available light. I don't really use any kind of artificial lighting, and I try to make things look natural. I mean, to me, you know, when they're projected, it's not quite as natural. When you look at the book, the colors in the book are really quite perfect. The book is beautifully printed, and the colors in the book are really, really accurate as to, you know, what it looked like to me when I was there photographing it. I saw a hand all the way in the back. Yeah?
Who made the what?
I did.
You named the sites.
I mean, there's something like Pine Pond is actually there, but you know, Burma Road is actually there. There's different names that are on the map, but you might have a whole area, and it says Burma Road, and there's, you know, 4 valleys in there, and 100 trees, and 2 or 3 creeks, and so I've had to name a lot of the places. Ooh, another dragon oak. Yeah, this is when dragon oak really was looking healthy. Can you see the dragon, sort of? Doesn't it kind of look like a dragon? Another Castle Rock. This was probably my, I think my first successful color panoramic photograph is in here. This was about my 5th successful panorama of Mount Diablo. I used this camera, this 100-year-old camera, that besides the fact that there was no viewfinder, it only worked half the time. So it would take, this particular camera took 2 pictures on a roll of film, so I would get 1 picture per roll of film. And my other camera took 4 pictures, and I would get 2 if I was lucky, if everything was going right and you know, everything worked. Oh, did we saw that picture already? I think I have a double in here. Poppies, you know. This was 1995, and I've been waiting for another. We've had one incredible poppy year since '95. It was maybe 4 years ago or so. And in all these years, I keep going back to the same field, and it's never looked the same. I keep looking for this. This is, I call this Blackbird's Field, and we're not going to have it this year either. So 2 years out of 27 years of photographing Diablo have been exceptional poppy years. One of my buckeyes. This is actually called prison buckeye. Buckeyes are the greatest tree to photograph. They're so twisted, and they're so great because in the wintertime, before they get their leaves, and their bark looks really white and kind of like skeletons. It's a fun. In the book, you'll see one page that has 4 different buckeyes in different seasons. There's one from each season: summer, fall, winter, spring. And the buckeyes look so different in each of the seasons. It's a great tree to photograph. This is my first good panoramic photograph on Mount Diablo with the 100-year-old camera. And the place that has the most ticks on the mountain too. But a beautiful, this in fact, I could even attribute my whole entire panoramic career to this one picture. This came out so good. This is the first really successful, you know, when I'd get these 100-year-old cameras, I'd have to rebuild them. And finally, I got it to work. This is the picture that happened from it. It was almost a fluke, really. It was way back in the beginning, but it kept me going.
Where was that taken?
This is in Little Pine Creek. Does anybody know that's an actual place, Little Pine Creek. It's just a lot of these photographs, they're from all around the mountain, but a lot happen on the Walnut Creek side, just around, if you drive into the park from the kiosk on North Gate Road, and you go up to Burma Road crosses, it's at 1,000 feet. So in that first 1,000 feet, I've probably taken about 75% of my photographs, because it's just, that's where I've seen the mountain lions, and that's where I've seen most wildlife, and that's where great waterfalls. It's not the waterfalls on the backside, but it's also the most ticks. But I don't like to drive that much, so I usually drive into the park and park. So that's why so many photographs are in that area. And it's also just a beautiful part of the park. And it's the closest to civilization, actually. And yet it's one of the wildest. This was, did anybody remember or see the Stephen Reinecke piece, the piece of music that was composed for the Contra Costa Wind Ensemble? Anybody catch that? That was at the Regional Center. This piece was commissioned for, actually we did a slideshow. I did a 3D slideshow at the Lesher Regional Center. And I took the composer, Stephen Reinecke, from the Midwest out on a hike. And the piece that he composed, this was the day that he was inspired to compose the piece. It was a great day, and we were walking along, and he had his sheets of music out, and he was just writing music. I mean, it was incredible. He was looking out at this great view and the fog and mist and everything, and he's scribbling away on his pad of music, and he could hear it in his head from looking at the view. That was very cool. I don't know what happened to that music. I'd like to get that. Here's the waterfall picture Linda was talking about. This is Upper Donner Canyon, actually looking across at Eagle Peak. And this waterfall is actually carved out a cave, Wild Oat Canyon. You climb up about a 30-foot sort of rocky, wet, slippery slope of rocks, and then you walk through this little cave to the back of it, and you can photograph out towards Eagle Peak. It's a very cool spot. Very wet, too. Another buckeye. This is right off Burma Road. This is my Van Gogh sky, yeah. It's in the book. I think these are all in the book. Another wildflower shot looking into Central County. This is on the Mary Bowerman Trail. It used to be called the Fire Interpretive Trail. It rings the very top of the mountain. If you're ever going for a walk and you just want to go on a nice, easy, quick walk where you have an hour, go up to the Mary Bowerman Trail. It's just the most beautiful trail. It's just below the summit. It's got the greatest views, full 360-degree views as you walk around. It snows up there, as you can see. There's really cool trees, and it's just a great hike. One of my manzanita shots, taken during the rain, of course. That's the only time to photograph manzanita. And this is a big, it's a pretty thick manzanita. This is just above Sycamore Canyon. They have so much character. And in the rain, the bark is so beautiful. It gets that reddish glow. Here's it further into the cave, that same Wild Oat Canyon cave.
Can normal people get there?
Normal people can get there. Normal with a little crazy. It's actually a pretty slippery climb. It's not that far, but you have to kind of climb up this rock wall with water coming down. But normal people could do it. This is actually from the Green Ranch, or Green, it's called Green Ranch. The whole story of the Green family is in the book. The Green family put up half the money for the book. So they get a whole section in the book on the history. They had a really neat house up there that the foundation is still left, and their old swimming pool is there, and their old tennis court. It's actually a pretty dangerous site because you could fall in the swimming pool, you could trip over the bricks, I think MDIA is going to be cleaning it up at some point. But this was the view from their living room, and this is up at about 3,000 feet maybe, something like that, just below the summit. I think that's the last photo. Oh no, another Castle Rock shot. Looks kind of like the last Castle Rock shot. Probably is. That's it. Real quick before we move on, and I know we're on a...
No, we're doing great.
Are we okay?
Oh yeah, we're doing great. I just want to say, that's why I talk about his photography so much, and his clouds so much, and his panoramas. And you've been on Mount Diablo, and you've hiked Mount Diablo, but you have not seen Mount Diablo like that before. And I mean, I could go on, and I won't, because I don't want to embarrass the guy. But, I've seen these photographs a number of times now, and the 181 that make up the book. And I continue to be impressed each time I look at those photographs. You can feel the bark of the manzanita, and you can step on the dried grass. You can feel the coarseness of the rocks that are up there. It's just remarkable. I'm sorry? Make a snowball with the snow. So again, the book is something for you to have and to treasure, for you, for your kids, for your family, folks who moved away. They will remember the times that they had on Mount Diablo. And the good news, too, is that all of these photographs that are in the book and more are available from Stephen in print form. You may have seen many of them if you visited the Save Mount Diablo offices or you've been on the website. Those are his photographs. So available and in the book, and then, of course, for you to enjoy yourself when you do go up to the mountain.
20 years of photography, 181 pictures. How did you choose?
That was a real pain. I
I
had tens of thousands of photographs over the 20 years, and it took a year. We've been working on this for two and a half years, and it took a year to edit down the photographs. I started going through hard drives and negatives and just gathering up photographs, and I'd get it down to 500 photos, and then I'd get it down to 400 photos, and then I got it down to the final 300 photos, supposedly. And then I get a call from Linda last August saying, oh, there's been a mistake. You have to get rid of 125 photographs. So then I had to knock it down to the 181 photographs. So pretty much every photograph in the book is one of my favorites. It was very hard to go from that last 300 down to 181. that took a while. But there were thousands of photographs, tons of photographs. But it, you know, I tried to make it, I wanted the book to be representing different parts of the park and different seasons, and there's black and white mixed in with color. So, you know, I kind of isolated photographs, but yeah, that was quite a chore. The book was a lot of work, and I want to say Linda's a pretty big fan of mine. Linda did a lot more than just write the book. She was the book coordinator. So she dealt with, I mean, we really made the book ourselves. We had a book designer who, you know, did the layout. I did all the layouts for the photographs, picked the photographs and did the layouts, and the book designer did the text. But Linda really coordinated the whole book effort. So one of the reasons why it looks so great is because of Linda's great job. It wouldn't look this good if Linda wasn't so good at. And this is her first book. This is my fourth book, but this is Linda's first book. And also Rod Watkins, who is sitting back there, my good friend Rod, who did the music for the first piece. Wasn't that nice? The music with the, you know, it's so great. I like to mention this because Rod does the music for all of my pieces. I've done Muir Woods, John Muir, Mount Diablo, and Rod composes and plays all of my music for me. And it's just wonderful to work with such a great musician that can look at my work and really gets it and figures out the music that can go with it. And he's also half of the Diablo duo, who is two of them. Anyways, I just wanted to thank you, Rod.
And in the same vein, I would say that the narrative that I put together really was inspired by Mount Diablo, but it's really inspired, too, by Stephen's photographs. We never intended for this to be a textbook by any means. It is an art book, but it needed some introduction to Mount Diablo. There's an introduction to the photographer, so you get a sense of who he is and where he's coming from. And then there is this delightful story about the Greens who lived up on the mountain from 1938 to 1965 with the photographs that I was able to research and find from UC Berkeley Design Archives and include in the book. So as Mount Diablo is rich with diversity and in different colors and textures and light and dark and clouds and clear and rolling hills that go up and down in contrast, so does the narrative, which was a delight for me, a real writer's dream, to be able to play with the words that way, the way that Stephen plays with the photographs and stitches them together and creates the photographs for me to be able to write the narrative that supports this, as I say, a dream come true. And I think as Rod's music supports your programs, that's how my narrative is. And you'll see in that the photographs that you see, all of a sudden you'll see a description of something that's in the photograph. And it was really serendipity because I wrote inspired by the photographs, but I didn't tell him what I was writing, and I didn't know exactly what photographs Stephen would include. And as we would go through his final choices, I'd say, I wrote about the manzanita, and I wrote about the poppies, and I wrote about the rolling hill. And it was very cool. It was very cool.
We were in sync. Yeah, we worked together quite well. Yeah, the book was quite an effort. It really, besides all the years of photographing, and I got to also thank my family, my son Julian, wife Susan, who put up with me being gone all the time to make all these photographs. So they've shared me with the mountain and my passion for photography. And it's been quite a project. So enjoy the book. And we are happy to know that the book will be in your homes and your offices and sent across the United States to your friends and family as well. We have too many copies. Okay, it's too many copies. You can come over here and get Any last questions? Are we?
Yes.
Were they living on Mount Diablo?
Okay, the family that lived on the home, that's a great question. Robert Green and his wife Deborah and their 4 children actually lived in Berkeley, 1938 through 1965. Unfortunately, Deborah Green died in 1958. She was a horsewoman. She grew up a horsewoman in Los Angeles. When Robert and Deborah Green were married back in the early 30s, and they lived in Berkeley, he was a very successful lawyer. She wanted land. She wanted a place where she could get away from the hustle and bustle of Berkeley, where she was raising her kids in school. She wanted to teach them about nature. She wanted them to appreciate tarantulas and snakes and coyotes and learn how to ride horses. So every weekend, while Robert stayed and worked, she would take her 4 children, you can imagine from Berkeley in 1938, 40s, 50s, you know, however they would come, the tunnel, I think, had been built, but still it couldn't have been as comfortable as it is now. No, it wasn't. And then all the way up to Mount Diablo, just short of the summit at Green Ranch. And you can get to Green Ranch. You can drive to one of the parks. Jim would remember the name of the Oak Knoll Park, I think, picnic area. And then you can walk up Summit Road.
Blue Oak.
I'm sorry?
Blue Oak.
Blue Oak. And then up to Green Ranch, so you can see that. And then in the summertime, they would spend months there.
So people, individuals could buy property or?
Well, he snuck in. At that time, there was private property, and this had been owned by a pair of folks, gentlemen who tried to mine the land, and it had been a land grant to them. So the land became available to purchase. The Greens purchased it, but then when Mr. and Mrs. Green passed away and the grown children did not want the land anymore, they gave it to the state park, Mount Diablo State Park. And that's why you can go visit it today. So if there are no other questions, we're going to wrap it up because books are for sale back there. Leslie Dawson and Jim Mitchell. Again, the book was published by Mount Diablo Interpretive Association, which is responsible. I'm sorry? Okay, I'll do that real quickly. Mount Diablo maintains the trails and the interpretive panels that are up on the mountain and the signage, and also staffs the 2 visitor centers. So they work to maintain the mountain. The name Diablo has a lot of myths and stories behind it, but the one that I believe, and I started to include in the book, but then I condensed my 10,000 words down to about 5,000 words, is that the missionaries were in the San Jose area and they were working toward converting some of the Native Americans who then ran away toward this area. They came toward Mount Diablo, toward this land. It wasn't known as Mount Diablo. When the missionaries, well, the soldiers came to get them, they hid in the thickets. The Indians hid in the thickets, and the soldiers were unable to find them to bring them back to the missionary. So really, Mount Diablo means devil thicket, not devil mountain. And they thought that the thickets were devilish because they were hiding the Indians from the soldiers. So that's pretty good. Yes, one last question.
Do the proceeds from this book benefit Mount Diablo, or do they?
No, they don't. That's so sweet. No, all the proceeds benefit Mount Diablo Interpretive Association. We've done this as a labor of love for all intents and purposes. All proceeds go back to Mount Diablo State Park and to help the good all-volunteer folks of MDIA continue to keep the trails clean, keep the signage up, maintain the interpretive panels, and produce the maps, the guidebooks, the trail guides, the flora and fauna brochures that are up there for all of you to have, to enjoy the mountain, to enhance your experience on the mountain. Okay, thank you. That's a great question.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.